It's on.
Hi guys, I want to open the interview today with one of my favorite quotes. For him who conquered the mind is the best of friends. For the one who has failed to do so, he's my remain greatest enemy. I'm super excited today because I'm with this fantastic person. He's a certified hypnotherapist, a mindset coach, and an NLP trainer. He specialized in helping people break free from their insecurity, lack of self-esteem, low self-confidence to ignite their power for success, happiness, and prosperity. He's passionate about educating people on the mechanics of the human mind to empower themselves to create positive, lasting changes and success in their lives. Over the last 5 years, he's been leading in many workshops, online courses, and trainings. His philosophy stems from the convictions that our mind is the most powerful aligned when used resourcefully. I'm so excited to meet him now. Are you ready to meet him? Well, welcome, Nenad.
Thank you very
Welcome
much.
to the.
I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to have a chat with you. So I'm excited for this.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. This is funny because I'm always thinking that my first guest would be a woman, but it turned out to be a man. Which I
Surprise.
believe, it's meant to be and it's perfect. So, do you want to just tell people a little bit of what we are going to talk today?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thanks for the intro. That was really nice words there. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about what is our identity, our self-image, how we can be more confident, and how all those things are kind of playing into each other, and basically trying to give you some practical tools to be more happier, more successful, or to just live a better life in whatever way it means for you.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Let's dive into our first question, shall we?
All right, okay. I'm excited.
All right, okay. So, what is the ego identity and how does it affect ourselves?
So it's a almost like a difficult question to answer because there's so many different description of what the ego is, and different people will tell you different things. The root word actually of the word ego in Latin means I. Ego in Latin means I, right? Which I think sums it up in the easiest way, because what the ego really is your sense of identity, is your sense of who you are, that what you identify with. I am Nenad, you're Saree, and all of us have like tremendous amount of beliefs and ideas about ourselves. And that's what creates our identity. That's what creates our sense of self, so to speak. It's that I, me, mine. And so that's pretty much what the ego is. It's a sense of individualization that makes us different from other people that we see around us, even if it's family members, strangers, and so on. So it's how we know ourselves to be, the concept that we have of ourselves. And so how does it affect you? Well, it affects you in the most profound way, because it's how you see yourself, what you think of yourself, your whole concept of yourself. So the way you think, the way you feel, the way you talk to people, in every single one of your interaction or an action in the world comes from that sense of self, the way you know yourself to be, whether that's consciously or in a very unconscious manner, because it's very habitual. We learn to be, and we forge that identity growing up, and then it just becomes a very habitual way of being. So that would be, I guess, the easiest way I can describe what ego identity is. It's how you know yourself to be. Every time you say I, it comes from a ego place.
So let's say if I say I am Saree, I am a woman, I am a tiger. That's like my ego talking. That's my
It's
identity.
pretty much, yeah. That's how you know yourself to be, because we could argue that you're much more than that.
Okay.
You're also a human being. You're also, if you wanted to have a spiritual way, you're also, energy of a mass of energy. So you have so much more than only the concept you have. So obviously we're going to have, like, in a society, a lot of concept like man, woman, black, white, green. This is all those things we know for what it is. But then you also have, like, certain deeper beliefs about yourself. I'm a Thai girl. Maybe you see yourself in a, maybe you think that you're smart. Maybe you think that you're not smart. How do you know
Okay.
that? Who told you? Right? What's the difference between thinking, well, I'm not smart as he is, so therefore I'm not smart, or I wasn't the smartest at school, so, well, it must mean that I'm not a smart person. And then you take on that I, right? And then it just becomes a way of seeing yourself. But is that the truth? Well, it's your truth. It's your individual truth, because that's what you believe about yourself. But really, it's only a narrative that you created, and pretty much like a box you put yourself into. And that's what the I is. So the ego is neither good or bad. Like, those beliefs are neither good, bad, right, wrong. It's just whether it's working for you or not. And so does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, no, I'm just kind of I'm digesting. So the ego is that what we create for ourselves, which is, I don't know if it's true or not true, right or wrong. So let's say, oh, Nenad, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you. So does it mean that having an ego, or like this identity, is bad for us? You know what I mean?
Well, there's a lot of people will tell you having an ego is bad. There's a lot of you gotta kill your ego, defeat your ego, let your ego go, and it's very vilified for whatever reason. And I have I guess a different perspective on it, because I don't see it as either good or bad. I just see it as something that is part of our experience here and part of us, right? It's very difficult to just say, like, oh, I'm just gonna be egoless, right, and be like a blank and just present with no thoughts, no attachment, no identity, no identification with whatsoever. There is probably just a couple of people on the planet who are able to have such a level of consciousness. But that's maybe not what most people want either. And so having an ego is neither good or bad. It just is. We have one, and so then it's, how do I make the best of it? Now, it's often seen in a negative way, because when people say, oh, you just have such a big ego, it's
Yeah, I heard that.
automatically, it's a saying that is negative. Or you're too full of yourself, you see yourself as too important, too arrogant, too narcissistic maybe. And so we see that ego equal bad, because people who have an ego means they're overly inflated, they feel too much of themselves, kind of thing. They're too arrogant. Okay. And so that's why they say, don't be an egoist, don't be selfish, kind of thing. So I think we have a lot of preconceived beliefs, because all of those are beliefs. So then I could ask you the question, well, is it better to have a deflated ego and to think very little of yourself, or is it better to have maybe the other spectrum and having too much ego? Or is it better to have the balance? And that's something for every single one of us to decide and to choose. But I don't think it's either good or bad. I think it just is, and we just have to use it in the best way.
Okay, so you're saying that having ego is not either bad or good. You mean it's okay to have ego, right? Is that what you're saying? That
Well,
is
it's not like it's not like we have a choice anyway. That's what I mean.
okay. Okay, well, maybe let me ask this. So how do we know that when I have the ego, like when the ego comes, how do I know that, okay, this is kind of like it's kind of like bad ego now? You know what I mean? It's kind of like
Yes.
how do I balance? How do I not use too much of the ego to, like, I don't know, harm me or make people
Well,
feeling hurt or something like that?
there's a lot of those negative aspect of the ego, and all those ideas we have that are negative of it is because there's a lot of things that comes out of fear. When a person is being very judgmental or very greedy or very acting in a very negative way toward other people, whether it's through jealousy, whether it's through being passive aggressive, whether it's through being like just like a dick. It usually comes from a place of fear and aggression. And if it usually comes as a coping mechanism, not because that person wants to be like this, but because that person is trying to cope on a level, because let's say they're feeling insecure. So they're going to try to compensate this way. Let's say you see somebody who's, doing very well in their life, and you pretty much want that kind of life, and you don't have it, right? So you notice you don't have it. And so what it does is that it makes you feel less, weaker, inferior, right? And that's why your ego gets bruised, because for the ego, the most important, like for that concept of that is that I want to feel important, significant. I want to be, safe, kind of thing. And so when we see something that has things that we don't have, or that makes us feel insecure, triggers that fear in us. And so the easiest way to deal with it is through judgment, is through, attacking them in a form of self-defense, if that makes sense. So I'm going to judge him in my mind, or even with my words, or gossip about him, or find flaws in him, as a form of protecting myself of my insecurities and make myself feel better. Okay. And that's a lot where the ego game is. And it's the same when we go, like, I'm gonna be happy when, I make the money, I get the girl, I get the guy, I get the car, I get the, that's also an ego game. I'll be happy when. And so we have this very outward driven need for gratification and validation. And that's what a lot of people experience in life, because, I'm going to get the promotion and then I'll be happy. Once I double my income, then I won't have any problem. So we create an illusion in our mind, whereas when I get that thing that's there, then, then I'll be happy. Then I'll feel good about myself. Then everything's going to be okay. And so that's when the ego can come up in a negative way, because it's an illusion that's created. Because if you cannot be happy where you are right now, high probability when you reach there, you'll be in the same state. Okay, so that's when our ego, like, so to speak, can affect us in a negative way, because we're always in this race to validate ourselves, or to feel better, or to feel good, or to have that status that we deny ourselves here now.
Yeah, it's such a big word, isn't it? Like ego, to and it's quite deep as well. So like I think I kind of understand the ego, but I'm just thinking, like for some people who probably never heard of this word ego before, like I would say, for example, I'm going to give myself as an example. I wouldn't say that like having ego is totally bad, because let's say if we don't have ego at all, I probably won't take care of myself. Like I probably won't go do the exercise and just, what I mean, or like eat healthy foods, because I still kind of like have the ego, because it's not like I want to look good for the sake of, but it's just, what I mean, just look after yourself. I think that's like when you kind of using the ego as your friend, not as an enemy, if that makes sense. Yeah. So
sorry, go ahead. Go on, because it's interesting what you're saying. So just I'd like to hear more.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm just because like I'm just kind of, to, like you say, I wouldn't say that I don't have ego at all, because even if like people who doing spiritual practice, or like on a spatial, like spiritual path, I know sometimes ego can just come and just like that. And I think like once you being aware of that, like consciousness, I think you can kind of, that's my ego thinking, or so yeah, because I mentioned about the consciousness, can you kind of like explain a little bit, like with the being aware, or like with the consciousness? Because I think that if you let's say if your ego comes in a bad or negative way, but if you can kind of like have the consciousness, I think it would help. So do you think can you help me with that, like how to shift from, you know, like having an ego to like consciousness?
Okay, well, that's a big question, right? There is not one way. There are everybody has his own way. There's infinite amount of ways, but what you're describing there is self-awareness. Maybe to come back to the example I gave you earlier, maybe you see that person who's where the grass is greener, right? And you feel a bit envious or jealous, and you feel that resentment or judgment or envy come out, whatever it is, right? And if you can notice this, that's self-awareness, right? So that's where you kind of grab that power back, because now you're observing yourself, you're observing the reaction that's happening, and you can then choose to not only react, but to how I'm going to respond. Because when you just react, it's happening and you're just reacting like this, it's a very subconscious way to react. Okay, but when I can stop and become aware, and I know something is happening here, and then I can choose whether I want to respond in that way, or whether I want to choose to see that person in a different way. So the most important then will be self-awareness, because if you don't know, then you don't know. And Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to run your life, and you'll call it fate. And I think it's so deep, because as long as you continue to play the victim, because that's pretty much what we do when you see when you're being angry or jealous and things like that. You play a victim. Something is happening to me from my environment, and I let it control me. Okay, so, and that's pretty much a victim blame game, but we're not victims. So when you can choose to respond consciously and start to look at, how I think, what's my attitude, what are those beliefs, what's creating that form of insecurity or that form of resentment, why am I responding in this way? That's when you start to claim your power back, and that's when you can start to choose to respond a different way, and then to start to create different results. So it comes a lot to your identity, and it comes also a lot to your self-image, your identity that we were talking about earlier, right? Now, consciousness is also a very big word, because your question was, how can I create more consciousness? So imagine you have a very, very, very immense ocean, the biggest ocean, the deepest ocean you can, right? And in that gigantic ocean, you have a lot of iceberg, a lot of small icebergs all around the place. That's pretty much who we are, right? You are a little iceberg, I am my own little iceberg, and everybody else is aware of being a little iceberg, a little person in that infinite ocean, in that infinite stream of consciousness, because in that example, the ocean is what consciousness is. Now, we think we are separated from everything else because I am, right? And you are, and I know I'm not you. So there is a sense of separation there. So I feel like I'm only my little iceberg, and I'm not the ocean. But what is the iceberg made of? Of water in a different form. But if you melt that iceberg, you just go back right into the same place. So, and this is pretty much what happens if you meditate a little bit, or if you have a little bit of a spiritual awakening, or a little bit of a spiritual moment, and you just observe yourself, like you're in that space where you're just silent and you're just observing, and you know you're not your body, you're not your mind, it's just something else there. And even if you don't know really what it is and how it is and what and all the details, but it's that peacefulness, that silence. That's what consciousness is. So consciousness is everything. You can use the word God or universe. Many people have different words for that, but that's what it is. So when you can start to go to that place and think outside of the box, you can start to change your box or make your box bigger, and then you can start to make your identity larger and bigger. Because now you can choose to believe that I'm not just Saree, who is a Thai woman and who has this and that, and that's all I can have. I can understand that this is just an idea that I have of myself. but I can understand that my real essence, and now it's a bit more of a spiritual talk, but my real essence is larger. Therefore, I have less limitation that I think I have. Okay, and that's when you start to dissolve the ego, because now you're starting to tap into something much bigger, much larger. So the one way to do that is definitely through meditation, and that's what will help you. And it's a path. It's something you can hear and listen and conceptualize, but until you experience it, it doesn't mean anything. It's it's just words, doesn't really mean anything. So it's something that everybody has to experience and seek for itself, and it comes in different flavors for everybody.
So are you saying that consciousness is being aware of who you are, being aware of what's going on around you, being aware of how you react or respond to the people or the situations? For example, let's say there is the person say, oh, sorry, you're stupid, you're making a fool of yourself. And when I heard it, I was like, I got so angry, and I just kind of, I got so defensive. So I just said back to that person, oh, who do you think you are? Why are you judging me? You think you're better than me? So that's when I, in kind of like that sense, doesn't mean that at that time I don't have the consciousness because I'm not being aware of how to respond better. You know what I mean?
Well, at that time, if you from just listening, you're being responsive. Sorry, reactive. Sorry. So something's happening, a threat, something, and I react in a way to protect myself. So I attacked in a way to protect my integrity of self. So, and that's not good or bad. Like, don't get me wrong. That's the whole point of this. Is not there's no good or bad. It's just people can be however they want to be. But if you're not happy with that, that's something else. If it's not working for you, then you have a duty to find something else that is working for you. And so then you can choose, well, if I'm reacting this way and I'm aggressing that person back, and it makes me feel angry and resentful and I don't like it, then what is a better way for me to respond? And that's when you start to expand your box of thinking. That's when you start to expand your consciousness as well, because now you start to think in a way that you haven't thought about before, and you're starting to react in a way that you haven't reacted before.
Okay.
Because let's say you choose to be like, well, you know what, I don't, fuck you, I don't care, and then just move on and be like, whatever. That's one way. Another way would be, there's thousands of ways you can respond to that, but if you choose one that works for you better than the one you have that wasn't, then you're growing. So your consciousness is already evolving.
Okay, so I guess it's just like when you catch yourself that, okay, this is my ego talking, or when you catch yourself that, oh, how I respond to that person, it is kind of like you're being aware, so that when you have the consciousness, right, when you kind of like in the, you know what I mean? I just want to know that. So how do I know that, oh, okay, so right now I'm being aware, like I have the consciousness, or like how do I know that I'm not like I'm in my subconscious and I don't know what I'm doing right now? It's just kind of like I want to know the difference. How do I know?
Well, the difference is you're not thinking about it, you're just doing, you're just reacting. So you're not having a second thought, you're not detached, you're not thinking about what I'm supposed to do, and you're not thinking about how I'm feeling, you're not thinking about, I'm just reacting that way. So it's, let's say, you go in that argument, or you go with, you argue with your boyfriend or something, and you just get very angry and you just scream. That's a reaction. That's a subconscious reaction. You're not thinking, like, oh my God, I'm being angry, it's pissing me off, so what do I do? That's a self-awareness thing. So I'm in a completely different state. Now I'm noticing that I'm getting very angry. And now I give myself the choice of, what do I do? Yeah. So one will be,
Okay.
I'm just, my anger is taking over. I'm just going, whatever. The other one
Okay.
is you have that gap where you choose what you're going to do.
Okay. All right. I think that makes sense. Now,
Okay.
so how consciousness can help us improve our personal growth and help us find this inner peace, happiness, and love?
It's a great question because one term that I like to use to make all of this much simpler is the term self-image. Or another word for this is identity. And it's, how do I see myself? What's my relationship with myself? Not in terms of I look in the mirror and this is who I am, this is what I see, but more like the internal relationship that you have of yourself. How do I see myself? How do I relate to myself? How do I carry myself? How do I do all those things? What do I think of me? What do I think I can do? What do I think I cannot do? And so forth. So by, and Einstein said that you can only solve a problem from a different level of consciousness than the one that created it. And if you apply this in your life, what that means is that if you stay the same person you are right now with the same concept of yourself that you have right now, you're very likely going to create the same result, the same condition in your life. That's not rocket science. That's just, you can look at your life and look at your result, and then you can just see, the pattern there. So how can raising your consciousness or changing your self-image impact you? Well, imagine, let's say a person who's trying to lose weight, for example. I think a lot of people try to do that. And that person, because they want to lose weight because once they see themselves that they're overweight, or they see themselves in a way that is not pleasant, so they like to change it. That's the premise, right? That's why they want to lose weight. I want to look better. I want to, be more in shape, or I want to lose something, or something along those lines. And so if you listen very carefully, this is how they see themselves. And maybe there's also the belief about, this is not beautiful, this is not pretty, this is not sexy, this is not good, attached to it. Okay, so that means, on a subjective, on a subconscious level, this is how they see themselves: not attractive, not pretty, not, all that narrative. So they're gonna go on a diet, or get a personal trainer, or however they choose to do that. And because they put the thinking and the feeling and the acting in that way, they start to see some results, right? They start to feel better. They go to the treadmill, they go to the gym, they eat better, they don't eat the pizza anymore, and they start to lose weight. They start to feel better, they start to be more confident. And then something happened, and they just bring themselves right back where they started. And that's what they call the yo-yo, right? And that's why so many people go on a diet after diet after diet after diet. So that tells me something's up here. So what's happening? Well, if the deepest need in human psychology is to remain consistent with how we see ourselves. So if subconsciously you see yourself as not attractive, not pretty, not all of that, and you see yourself maybe along those lines that we talked about, no matter how consciously you're going to try to strive toward losing weight, you'll find a way to bring you back right there until you start to change how you think and how you see yourself. It's just like an AC. If you set your AC at 25, it's going to automatically keep the room at 25. If you open the door, it's going to blow harder. If you bring some ice, and then it's going to change the flow. And our subconscious mind is the same. It's automatically. And that's why people say, oh, I sabotage my results because I started drinking, I had the donut, I did the thing, I stopped eating, and then I'm right back where I started. And this can be applied, if you look at people who go after relationship after relationship and always be like, well, I always end up with the right person, with the wrong person, kind of thing. Well, the pattern is that you are in every single one of those relationships. So you should also think about what you're doing there. And so everything else can be traced back to your relationship to yourself. if you cannot keep the result that you want, and if you kind of always bring yourself back to a place where you're not happy, is because subconsciously you're trying to match that program that you created for yourself. So how do you go about this to be happier, healthier, and all of that you asked me, right? You gotta start to think greater of yourself. You gotta start to raise your consciousness. Just like you said earlier, you gotta start to, choose a new way to see yourself. Okay, you gotta start to believe something different, because as long as your attitude toward yourself doesn't change, how can you expect anything else to change? Okay, and it's something that only you can do. And so you can, there's so many ways you can start, but I would start here. First, you need to have clarity. What do you want? Who do you want to be? That's a very, very important question to ask yourself, and it's not an easy question to answer. But if you take some piece of paper and you start to write down, who do I want to be? Not who you are, but you write it in present tense, it will give you some clarity toward the person you want to be. And then it's about, how can I be that person? What kind of belief, what kind of self-talk, what kind of attitude does that person have? How does that person talk to other people? If you want to be deeply appreciated and loved by other people, you better start treating other people that way. Because that's how you're demonstrating that you are that type of person. If you're trying to look for the perfect, the perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, you better start being that person yourself. And and that means that who you are right now needs to change. And to maybe close up that my very long answer here is, there was a plastic surgeon in the 60s, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, I think. He noticed something about that subject of self-image, right? He said that when I do a plastic surgery on a woman or a man, and I, sometimes I remove a scar, and what I notice is that I remove it and the person looks physically nice, but something changed in their personality as well. They're more confident, they talk to people differently, they go on and they do amazing things. So there is not only the physical aspect that changed, but something deeper between themselves change. And yet there's other people who do the same similar type of surgery, and all they can see is the flaws. Nothing changes for them. They continue to think there's something wrong, they're not pretty, they continue to have the same narrative. And that's where this concept of self-image started. And so my invitation, if you want to change your life, you're going to start to change how you relate to yourself.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. Okay. All right. This is a bonus question. It's not on my list, but okay. I think you mentioned about meditation. That is one way to help us raise consciousness. Do you meditate?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's good. Now, I think the term meditation, when I say that, most people think it's kind of like a religion. And can you just touch a little bit about that, how meditation can help us raise our consciousness?
I've been meditating daily for over 2 years now, and it's been probably the best habit I ever started. And it's very difficult to explain why, because you go through a lot of physical, emotional, and spiritual growth, but you also have a lot of physical and health aspects. So it gives you clarity, it kind of declutter your mind, it gives you a lot of energy, and your ability to focus also improves greatly. Now, meditation is a big word, and for most people it's very difficult to start, because what happens is when you just sit, right, and it's basically it's very easy. You just have to sit and do nothing and kind of empty your mind. That's pretty much what it is if you keep it simple, right? But for most people, this is very difficult, because the moment they sit down, the mind is bombarded, and then they start to feel like, well, I'm doing something wrong because I cannot have no thoughts. Well, it's not about having no thoughts, because you're gonna have thoughts. It's just the way it is. So your thoughts are gonna come and go, and it's going to be like this, and there's gonna be days where it's easier and days when it's harder, and that's okay. So it's not a question of like having zero thoughts and being like a Buddhist monk or whatever. It's just a matter of becoming aware. See, this is where you start the awareness part, because here's the thing: when you sit down there and you sit for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however long you choose to do it, and you start to notice just the type of thinking and stories and things that comes into your mind, you start to notice what you think about most of the day when you're not paying attention. And for some people, maybe you're sitting there and then you're like, oh, am I doing this right? Maybe something wrong. Maybe I'm not sitting the right way. Am I sitting the right way? You know, and you're laughing because it's stupid, but it's like, I guarantee you that that person in his life constantly asks himself or herself, am I doing the right thing? Is it the right way to do it? Is there a better way to do it? And so that pattern goes and follows them everywhere in everything they do during the day. So when you just sit there, not only you have all those health benefits, which are really awesome, but you also can start to become aware of, what's my mindset, my attitude, what kind of thoughts are holding me back. And it's priceless in terms of not only like, releasing those thoughts, but also, like starting to make changes. Yeah. So
So
just do it.
I was laughing because like my clients, they always say, oh, sorry, I can't really sit still for 2 minutes because like I keep thinking a lot. And some people say every time I meditate, I just kind of like fall asleep. So like, do you have like any tips or technique to kind of help a beginner who wants to start doing meditation?
Sure. It's something I recommend to a lot of people. It's, first of all, sit. Don't lay down, because it's easier to fall asleep when you lay down. So if you can just sit on a chair somewhere where you're like comfortable, you got to just get comfortable, and then start with maybe some form of guided meditation when you have like, somebody's just guiding you to, focus on your breath, focus on this, focus on that. It's just very easy for like 5 minutes to just focus on somebody. Okay, so you have really nothing to do, and then you can progressively start to do it on your own. The second most important tip that I have is keep it simple. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to achieve nirvana or enlightenment. Don't expect anything miraculous. Just go for 5 minutes, start with 5 minutes, a good amount, and do it. It's easy to do. It's easy not to do. And that's the thing, right? It's very easy to do, but it's very easy not to do. And again, if you talk yourself out of it, I guarantee you that you're going to talk yourself out of everything else in your life using the same argument. I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. It's too hard. I can't stop my mind, blah, blah, blah. It's the same sort. You gotta notice that inner chatter that's talking you out of meditating is the same inner chatter that's taking you out of everything else.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's awesome. That's good. Now, this is the last question.
Nice.
Okay. If people who are listening to this interview, they are pretty new to this whole concept of ego, identity, consciousness, or even meditation, what would be the first step for them to start creating positive changes that would help them success in their lives? Like, what would be the first step for them to, to understand these terms or what we're talking today?
Well, there's many ways to start. Everybody's in a different place and different things. So if you look into, let's say you're a bit, so the question is, they're a bit maybe in a bad place and they don't really know how to move forward. Is that correct? Okay, so
yeah, let's say like I want to make a change. I want to have a better life. I want to become happier. How do I start?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. I think it's maybe something a lot of people can relate. First of all is to, acknowledge that, what do I want? Because if you cannot answer this question, what do I really want? You're going to live based on, your predictable past, based on autopilot. Because if you're not driven by a vision of your future, you're just going to keep on doing trivial things that you do every single day. Okay, so your mind is like a GPS. It needs a direction. It needs a destination, and that's why the talks about goal in the self-development area is so big, because it gives you direction. So ask yourself, what do I want? I want a happier life. It's not very specific. Everybody wants a happier life. What does that mean to you? What specifically, what does that mean to you in your life right now? So think about it, and don't be afraid to think big or to think outside the box, or to give yourself the chance to really explore this question, because it's the first step, is to have a bit of clarity about what do I want moving forward. Then the second best advice I can give you is to start working on your attitude. Start working on how you see yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you feel about yourself. Because if you can start to do that, and you can start to change the way you relate to yourself, and you can start to think greater of yourself, you start to not only act differently, but you start to get different results. And and that's the thing, you cannot, ultimately we cannot rely on anything outside of us to bring us that long-lasting fulfillment or happiness that we desire. Because it's always going to be, even if you get all the money, even if you get all those things, there's always going to be a bad day. There's always going to be a challenge. There's always going to be new problems. And you're always going to need to, find a way to ground yourself from within, and to be happy, and to make things work, and to, stay committed and persistent, and all of that. And that comes from your mindset. So ask yourself, where am I right now? And, what am I feeding in my mind every single day? Am I watching, endless video of cats and dogs on Facebook? Am I, tuning into the news that are, bombarding me with negativity and how the world is fucked up and so on? Am I engaging in a lot of gossip with friends? How am I, how do I look at other people? How judgmental am I? So be very honest with yourself. Find where am I with my mindset right now? And then this will give you an indication of what I need to shift. And the best way, the easiest way to start, there's, okay, we talked about meditation, which is fantastic, but the second best advice I can give you, if you want to do something very simple every day, is to have a little book, a piece of paper, and every day write down 10 things you can appreciate and that you're grateful for. Okay.
I love it.
Because it's again, it's very simple to do. It's very simple not to do, but it makes a world of difference, because when you start the day commanding and directing your mind to look for positivity, for look things you appreciate, for look at the thing that you have, for look at the thing that you can make, that you can be happy about, not only you discover that, wow, there's a lot of things I've been taking for granted, but there's a lot of things that are working for me. But it will also start to change your attitude toward life. And the more you practice this feeling of appreciation, the more you start to feel better, the more you start to think differently, the more you start to impact every single other area of yourself. And energy is contagious. So you can either choose to cultivate those fearful thoughts, or you can choose to apply the antidote, which is appreciation and gratitude. And so those two simple things, knowing what you want, and then starting to give more appreciation, can start the process for sure.
Wow. Okay. I think we've covered a lot today, and I'm just got a mind blowing. Okay, Nenad, I can just talk to you for hours, but okay, is there any last message that you want to say to people who are listening right now? Any message that you want to leave with?
Sure. A lot. Obviously, I enjoy this conversation. But to sum it up, really, your mind is either your best ally or your worst enemy, and it really depends on what you do with it. And what holds us back is not often who we think we are, but who we think we're not. And if you can start to see yourself as being those things that you think you're not right now, things will start to change for you. So if you don't know where to start, if you don't know anything about all of that, or if if you're just interested in that, I have a lot of free resources. I have a free book. I have a free mini course that you can just access, no charge, and it gives you a place to start. It gives you more of this if you want to get started. So that's also something I'm inviting you to try and do for yourself.
All right. Okay, Nenad. Okay, I want to acknowledge you for being here with me today to help people wake up and, you know, to start making a change, to create, you know, some positive thoughts and just to be more happier and be success in their lives. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. All right, guys. If you want to know more about Nenad's work, I'm going to put up the link in the description box, okay? And I'm so looking forward to see you for my next interview, and let's see who is going to be my next guest.
Thank you so much, Saree. Thank you. It was a fantastic opportunity. I truly appreciated this conversation. Thank you very much.